So, stop scrolling. Stop whatever you were about to do in the next 10 seconds. Because something has happened to Meghan Markle over the past 7 years that the wider press is now, in plain terms, finally prepared to describe. The Hollywood A-list has left the chapel. Not metaphorically, literally. The same celebrity power players who flew into Windsor in 2018 for what was, at the time, billed as the wedding of the decade have, almost without exception, quietly disengaged from the household they once celebrated. The wedding photographs from that day now look like snapshots of a network that no longer functions. Picture the original guest list. Oprah Winfrey sitting in the pews, smiling for the cameras. George and Amal Clooney arriving together at the height of their global star power. Serena Williams, seated beside her husband, one of the few American friends Meghan had brought with her from her pre-royal life. James Corden, the warm British host, on hand to guide the wedding speeches with the lightness only he could provide. Idris Elba behind the DJ booth for the evening reception. David and Victoria Beckham. Sir Elton John performing for the assembled guests. In short, it was the kind of guest list ordinary celebrities could only dream of being part of, all brought together in a chapel in the English countryside by the marriage of the Queen's grandson to an American actress. 7 years later, almost every single name on that list has, in the language of the celebrity ecosystem, walked away. Some have quietly stepped back. Some have actively pivoted toward the working royals. Some are now described by people in positions to know as wanting nothing to do with the couple at all. Tonight, we are going through the entire list, name by name, story by story. And the picture that emerges is perhaps the clearest explanation yet for why this past month has felt the way it has for the Sussex household. The empty Geneva Square, the wedding anniversary tribute that was met with silence, the Montecito kitchen that has become a financial signal. None of it makes sense on its own. All of it makes sense once you understand what has happened to the chapel guest list. Tonight in order: Oprah Winfrey, and the line now circulating across royal commentary about why the relationship is reportedly being maintained by, in the published phrase, a hair's breadth. The Clooneys, and the very specific reason the Sussexes have never been invited to the most prestigious humanitarian fundraiser on the Clooney social calendar. Serena Williams, the friend who first opened the door into Hollywood, whose social calendar has now visibly pivoted toward the very people Meghan Markle has fallen out with. Idris Elba, who took over the DJ booth at the wedding and is now developing a Netflix project tied to the King's own charity. The Beckhams, and the genuinely revealing story of why David Beckham flew his sons halfway around the world for an Invictus visit, only to be, in plain terms, snubbed. Jessica Mulroney, the closest friend at the wedding itself, whose entire career imploded in 2021 without a single supportive public word from the woman she stood beside in Windsor. So settle in. Pour yourself something strong. This is the kind of week the gossip world waits years for. Let's begin with Oprah Winfrey, because Oprah remains the single most consequential name on the original guest list, and because the reporting surrounding the current state of that relationship may be the clearest piece of celebrity gossip published in the royal commentary world this year. On the surface, Oprah Winfrey was the most important American ally the Sussex household gained during the entire post-royal era. The 2021 interview at her Montecito estate generated a global news cycle. The interview also triggered the Heritage Foundation's interest in Prince Harry's United States immigration records, a story we covered in earlier videos. It also sparked the Kensington Palace bullying inquiry, which was announced just days before the interview aired. In the immediate aftermath, the impression was clear: the most powerful woman in American broadcasting now appeared to be publicly backing the Sussexes' post-royal mission. 7 years later, the picture looks very different. Meghan Markle has attended events at Oprah Winfrey's home in the years since. The relationship has not formally ended, but the two women are no longer, in plain terms, close. Reporting on the current state of the friendship has repeatedly used one careful phrase that has now spread across royal commentary. The relationship, by every available signal, is being maintained by a hair's breadth. A hair's breadth is the space between connection and rupture. It describes a friendship that has not completely ended, but is no longer thriving. And here is the explanation now appearing in print. attributed to a credentialed American journalist whose palace and celebrity sourcing has remained one of the most consistent presences throughout the Sussex story this year. According to this published account, Oprah Winfrey has been slowly distancing herself from the Sussexes for quite some time. The reasoning is cold, but, in the logic of major American broadcasting, understandable. Oprah cannot afford to let the relationship drift too far away because, if one of the three big Ds ever happens, divorce, death, or drama, she will want the interview. She will want first refusal on the next major Sussex moment, whatever that moment may be. So, operationally, the relationship is being kept on a low simmer. Not warm enough to qualify as a real friendship. Not cold enough to lose access to the next major sit-down interview. That, in plain language, is where the relationship now stands. The bottom line, according to critics, is that Oprah Winfrey tends to value relationships most when there is something significant to gain from them. And the implicit? The wider observation in the piece is the deeply recognizable irony of two of the most criticized public figures in modern celebrity culture remaining in another celebrity's orbit precisely because their future crises may still hold commercial value. In other words, a broadcaster cannot afford to lose the rights to cover them. It is worth pausing on the broader implication because it explains a great deal about how the Sussex household has been allowed to drift this far without an early or decisive intervention from the very people who once surrounded it. The Hollywood model of celebrity friendship often operates on a simple principle. The warm public signaling continues for as long as the underlying commercial calculation continues to make sense. Friends host the dinner. Friends share the private jet. Friends post the supportive Instagram caption. The friendship continues to be performed for the cameras because performing the friendship benefits everyone involved. But the moment the commercial value of that proximity shifts in the opposite direction, the friendship begins to lose visible support without ever formally ending. The friend stops returning calls quite as quickly. The friend declines the next invitation with a reason that sounds believable. The friend suddenly starts posting photos with other people instead. In celebrity language, the relationship becomes long-armed. That is the exact pattern sitting at the center of the current Oprah Winfrey Sussex dynamic. And as we will see throughout the next several chapters, it is also the same pattern behind the wider Hollywood pullback. There is another broader observation worth making about Oprah Winfrey's own position, one that is rarely spoken aloud in royal commentary. Oprah Winfrey possesses one of the most carefully managed personal brands in the entire American media ecosystem. Every public relationship she maintains appears, by every available reading of her decades-long business strategy, to pass through a commercial filter as a matter of professional discipline. To Oprah, relationships are not only personal, they are also part of the business. Friendships also carry reputational risk, especially for a brand as carefully managed as Oprah Winfrey's. The same calculation that brought her to Windsor in 2018 for what was, at the time, the biggest wedding in the world is the same calculation now keeping her, in plain terms, at a hair's breadth rather than at the center of the Sussex orbit. The calculation itself has not changed. What has changed are the inputs. The Sussex household is no longer worth what it was worth in 2018. It may, however, become extremely valuable again the moment one of the three Ds eventually arrives. And so, the option is preserved. The warmth is not. That is the difference, in cold operational terms, between a friendship and a portfolio position. By every visible signal in Oprah Winfrey's current behavior, the Sussex household now resembles a portfolio position. Now to Serena Williams. And in some ways, this may be the most quietly painful relationship of all. Because Serena Williams was the original friend. The friend who reportedly introduced Meghan Markle to her first major Hollywood agent back in 2006, when Meghan was still an unknown actress writing her early lifestyle blog, The Tig. She was part of the original American support system that helped bring Meghan into the Hollywood social circuit in the first place. The reporting surrounding the current state of their relationship uses perhaps the single most devastating word celebrity friendship journalism can use: fine. According to the published phrasing, Serena Williams is fine with the couple. In the entire vocabulary of celebrity relationship reporting, fine is the temperature of a friendship that no longer carries warmth. Fine is what people say when they can no longer honestly claim closeness, but also cannot publicly admit to a rupture. Fine is the holding language of a friendship that has, in operational terms, quietly ended without anyone formally announcing its ending. And according to the reporting, the reasoning goes even further. Serena Williams has, in recent years, the published account suggests that Meghan Markle deliberately put distance between herself and Serena Williams because, in Serena's apparent framing, she is not a drama queen and has grown tired of the surrounding noise. The reporting then introduces the single most pointed piece of social geometry in the entire chapter. According to the published reports, Serena Williams' new closest friend is the socialite Emma Hayton, the Marchioness of Bath. Serena recently posted photos from the Met Gala alongside the Marchioness. In the same images appeared Edward Ninful, the former editor of British Vogue and once a close friend of Meghan Markle, who is now widely reported to be estranged from her. That was not a casual social photograph. It was a celebrity pivot. The new best friend position in Serena Williams' social circle has now been openly filled by a woman who, in social terms, stands on the opposite side of the Sussex story. The two former close associates Meghan Markle has reportedly fallen out with Emma Hayton, the Marchioness of Bath, and Edward Ninful. Both appeared in the same Met Gala frame as Serena. The audience viewing that photograph and reading those tags is not, by any honest interpretation, being asked to see a coincidence. Instead, they are being shown, through clear visual language, where loyalties now appear to lie. It is worth noting the specific texture of the social pivot Serena Williams appears to have made, because the people she has now publicly aligned herself with represent the most precise countersignal she could possibly deliver. The Marchioness of Bath is a member of the British aristocracy through marriage and a frequent presence within the same elite social circles Meghan Markle once attempted to occupy. Edward Ninful remains one of the most influential figures in international fashion media. He was also a close personal friend of Meghan Markle during her early royal years, but has reportedly fallen out with her since then. By choosing to publish Met Gala images featuring both of these figures, Serena Williams was not, in any honest reading, making a neutral choice. She was making a statement, a deliberate visual statement about where her loyalties now lie. The audience for that statement was the wider celebrity community, and the signal received was clear. There is one more piece of context that makes the Serena Williams story land particularly hard right now. The recent, as ever, brand unboxing video, the one we covered in earlier scripts, featured Serena Williams attempting to read aloud the scent notes of Meghan Markle's children-themed candles. During the video, she struggled with the pronunciation and admitted on camera that she does not particularly like chocolate while looking at a box of broken anniversary chocolates. It was the visible last gasp of an old loyalty being asked to perform one more time. Serena Williams did the unboxing, but the video went viral for the wrong reasons. The recent Met Gala social dynamics have now confirmed that the friendship is no longer what it once was. Now to the Clooneys, because this section of the story contains perhaps the single most quietly devastating piece of social analysis in the entire chapter. By every available reading of the early post-royal period, George and Amal Clooney were among the most active high-end supporters of the Sussex household. They maintain residences across New York, Los Angeles, London, France, and Italy. Reports suggest they made room for Meghan Markle on their private jet for several journeys in the years following the royal departure. In a similar pattern of elite hospitality, Serena Williams reportedly covered the bill at one of the most exclusive hotels in Lake Como during a Sussex visit. The broader source language surrounding the underlying dynamic is unsparing. According to one source close to the wider Clooney circle, the Sussex household asks for significant resources to be spent because they believe it is a privilege to be in their company. In the source's framing, they reportedly feel entitled to private planes and luxury hotel suites. And in a pointed British phrase that has now appeared in print, the source reportedly describes Meghan Markle personally as the cheapest. In British social parlance, that is not a description of money, it is a description of character. It is the kind of language used for someone who expects others to pay and who treats hospitality as a right rather than a gift. The relationship with the Clooneys did not survive that operating style. According to the published reporting, the friendship ended during the post-royal departure period. The Clooneys now reportedly want nothing to do with them. And here is the detail that lands the hardest. The Clooney Foundation hosts an annual humanitarian fundraiser called the Albies, named after Nelson Mandela, honoring individuals doing significant humanitarian work around the world. The Sussex household, who regard themselves as prominent international humanitarians, have never been invited to the Albies. They have never received an Albie Award, nor have they appeared at the event in any capacity. In the cold language of social signaling, that amounts to a deliberate exclusion. The most prestigious humanitarian fundraiser hosted by the people who once shared private jets with Meghan Markle has, year after year, declined to place the Sussexes either on the guest list or on the honors roster. The social verdict is delivered each year. The invitation never arrives. There is one further detail in the underlying dynamic that explains why the rupture became permanent. According to the published commentary now circulating, George and Amal Clooney were never especially close friends with Meghan Markle in the deeper sense. In plain terms, they reportedly had very little genuinely in common with her socially or politically. And in the line that has now widely circulated, the Clooneys ultimately sided with the actual royals. That is the underlying judgment the Albies' continued non-invitation appears to make operationally clear. There is also a wider piece of cultural context worth noting. The Clooney pullback is significant. George Clooney has spent the past 2 decades quietly building one of the most carefully managed reputations in the American entertainment industry. A steady film career, serious humanitarian work, carefully considered public statements, and a wife whose own legal and human rights work commands genuine international respect. The Clooney brand, in operational terms, is the careful brand, the kind of brand that does not typically allow itself to become associated with controversies it cannot fully control. So when the Clooney brand decides to step away from a friendship that is no longer adding value, the decision is not, by every available indication, an emotional one. It is a clinical one. The brand calculation has been made. The conclusion has been delivered. The wider Clooney social calendar speaks volumes as well. During the same period in which the Sussex household has been absent from every meaningful Clooney social event, George and Amal Clooney have continued hosting their Italian summers at Lake Como, their fundraisers in Los Angeles, their charitable events in London and New York, and their annual humanitarian gatherings. The guest lists at those events have continued to attract some of the most prestigious names in American and European public life. The fact that the Sussex names have not appeared on any of those guest lists, despite the Sussex side continuing to publicly frame itself as globally relevant humanitarians, is the kind of social signal the entire celebrity ecosystem reads as a verdict. The Clooneys are not, by any honest assessment, openly hostile toward the Sussex household. They are simply behaving as though the Sussex household no longer exists for them in any operational sense. And in the cold language of elite celebrity social calendars, that is the most devastating posture possible. Because there is no public rupture to fight against. There is only absence, and absence cannot be argued with. There is one further point that makes the Clooney chapter land even harder. This part lands particularly hard because Amal Clooney, by every available reading of her public profile, is regarded as a serious international human rights lawyer with genuine credibility in the global advocacy world. Her work on cases involving press freedom, women's rights, and international atrocities has earned substantial respect across institutional circles in Europe and North America. The Sussex side has repeatedly attempted to position itself as a credible voice in adjacent areas, online safety, children's rights, and mental health advocacy. But where the credible practitioner of those subjects appears to sit within the Clooney household, the public-facing advocacy version of those same subjects sits within the Sussex household. And audiences watching the two operations side by side have, over time, drawn their own conclusions about whose voice carries genuine weight. The Clooneys, by every available signal, have made it very clear which voice they regard as the credible one. Now to Idris Elba, because this development is genuinely interesting. Idris Elba is, by widely shared assessment across the British acting community, one of the most genuinely admired figures in the industry. He is also the man who, on the night of the royal wedding, stepped into the DJ booth during the evening reception and ran the music for the dance floor. 7 years later, the relationship with the Sussex household has, in operational terms, effectively ended. The reason appears straightforward. Idris Elba has become a prominent supporter of the King's Trust, the charity formerly known as the Prince's Trust, which remains one of the working royal family's flagship philanthropic institutions. He also has a Netflix project in development connected to the wider King's Trust ecosystem. In practical terms, he has made his choice, and by every available signal, that choice is the working royals. There is a broader pattern in that decision worth pausing on. Across the broader Hollywood pullback, an important pattern emerges. The celebrities who have stepped away from the Sussex orbit have, for the most part, not made loud public statements about the rupture. Instead, they have quietly pivoted toward institutional engagement with the working royal family. The appearances connected to the King's Trust, the photographs at the Chelsea Flower Show alongside the King, the state visit guest lists, and the patient, understated charitable work the working royals have continued throughout the post-royal years all point in the same direction. The dominant pattern is not anger. It is reorientation. The celebrities walking away from the Sussex household are, by every available signal, walking toward something else. And in nearly every case, that something else is the institutional structure the Sussexes left behind. Now to the Beckhams. And this chapter deserves extra attention because the underlying details are genuinely revealing about the deeper dynamics behind the wider social collapse. David and Victoria Beckham were, by most available accounts, among the closest Hollywood-adjacent friends within the original Sussex social circle. At some point during the immediate post-royal period, however, the friendship cooled significantly. Sources familiar with the rupture suggest that part of the breakdown stemmed from suspicions within the Sussex household that Victoria Beckham was leaking information to the British press. That suspicion reportedly enraged David Beckham personally. By every available indication in the wider reporting, Victoria Beckham was not the source of the leaks. But once the accusation was made, the damage, in the social shorthand of close Hollywood friendships, was no longer recoverable. And that, ultimately, became the turning point? It is the broader biographical reporting that adds the truly consequential layer to this story. David Beckham reportedly flew himself and his sons halfway around the world to Sydney to support Prince Harry at the Invictus Games. The visit was understood to include a planned personal meeting with Harry himself. That meeting never happened. In the social phrasing that later emerged, the Beckhams were effectively left waiting. Following that very public snub, the relationship did not survive. This is the point in the story that complicates the simplified narrative in which Meghan Markle is portrayed as the sole cause of every Sussex social rupture. According to the available reporting, the Sydney snub was driven by Prince Harry's own decisions, not Meghan's. That observation carries weight coming from a biographer who spent considerable time within Harry's circle and who had, in earlier years, been broadly sympathetic to his side during various royal disputes. The pattern now emerging is not a single dynamic driven by one half of the couple. It is a broader operating posture shared by both, one that appears to treat long-established friendships as expendable once they no longer serve the immediate interests of the brand. The present-day contrast is striking. David Beckham has recently been photographed alongside the King at the Chelsea Flower Show. He also remains close to the Prince of Wales and is, by every available signal, fully integrated into the working royal social ecosystem. The boy from East London, whose global celebrity status made him one of Britain's most influential sporting ambassadors for 2 decades, has, in operational terms, chosen to stand beside the institution rather than the household that walked away from it. And there is one final detail worth noting because it captures the deeper social dynamic in a single observation. Among the very small number of people who remain genuinely close to the Sussex household are members of the Soho House Circle. The global membership director, who was reportedly central to the early stages of the romance between Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, was even placed in a front-row pew at the wedding itself. Also included was a Suits cast actress who has remained in close contact in the years since. The wider category these remaining loyalists fall into is revealing. The people who have stayed most loyal to the Sussex household, according to the language now appearing in print, are individuals who remain socially beneath them and continue to gain something from the relationship in return. That is a harsh assessment, even by the standards of celebrity friendship reporting. The framing suggests that the network has, in operational terms, hollowed itself out. The original A-list has largely departed. The people who remain are drawn from the layer of the celebrity ecosystem where proximity to the Sussex name still provides an upward social pull. The friendships that survive are the friendships in which the social trade is asymmetric. The friendships that have ended are the ones in which both sides originally brought something roughly equivalent to the table at the wedding itself. The Hollywood A-list does not, according to the social dynamics now being documented, engage in asymmetric trades for very long. Now to Jessica Mulroney. This is perhaps the clearest case study in the wider pattern. Jessica Mulroney, the Canadian stylist and television personality, was, at the time of the wedding, one of Meghan Markle's closest reported friends. She effectively served as the chief friend at the wedding itself, holding a front-of-chapel role and receiving considerable public visibility on the day. In 2020, Jessica Mulroney became the subject of significant public controversy following an argument with an American social media influencer, during which she was widely criticized for what many characterized as a misuse of her platform. Her Canadian television show was subsequently cancelled. Meghan Markle did not publicly defend her old friend. She did not issue a supportive public statement. She did not, in the social grammar of close friendships, step into the breach for someone she had only recently elevated to the role of chief friend at her wedding. By every available indication, the friendship ended at that point. The line that has since circulated comes from Meghan Markle's former agent at the talent agency that represented her before the royal years. The observation, delivered in just 3 words, was, "Meghan moves on." That was the entire characterization. And those 3 words, in the social grammar of celebrity friendship reporting, became the most economical possible summary of a pattern that has now been documented across the entire wedding guest list. The Jessica Mulroney story carries particular weight because of how complete the public abandonment appeared to be. The 2 women had, by every available account, been close for years before the wedding. Jessica Mulroney was, according to widespread reporting at the time, central to the early Meghan project, in ways that extended well beyond simple friendship. She advised on styling. She advised on positioning. She was reportedly involved in the early image management that helped make Meghan Markle a recognizable figure in the Canadian press during the dating period. Her placement at the wedding itself, with the highly visible role she occupied, served as a public statement about the closeness of that bond. So when the moment came in 2021 for the friendship to be tested, the watching public expected at least some gesture of solidarity. The kind close friends, within the social grammar of the modern celebrity press, are expected to extend during moments like that. The gesture never came. The silence remained, and by the time that silence stopped being notable, the friendship was, in plain terms, over. Audiences revisiting the Jessica Mulroney chapter now are not, by any honest reading, simply watching a difficult personal dispute unfold in slow motion. The audience is watching what appears to be a worked example of the operating principle. An old friend is no longer useful. That old friend has, in addition, become an active reputational liability. Therefore, in operational terms, that old friend is no longer considered a friend. The pattern is not, by any honest reading, unique to Jessica Mulroney. By every available signal from the wider Hollywood pullback, the same pattern now appears to have repeated itself across the entire wedding guest list. Step back from the individual stories for a moment and consider the broader judgment now being openly delivered by some of the most senior royal commentary voices. The wider social collapse is, according to the most consistent published assessments, the predictable endpoint of an operating style that treats every new relationship as transactional. The famous people were brought in because proximity served the brand. The famous people are now leaving for the exact same operational reason. The proximity no longer serves the brand. In some cases, that proximity is now viewed as actively damaging it. The Hollywood ecosystem has, in the cold language of celebrity reputation management, weighed the cost-benefit equation and concluded that the safer position is distance. There is also a broader layer of analysis worth considering. The Sussex household does not, in operational terms, appear to accept that the social collapse could be its own responsibility. The narrative carried throughout the post-royal years has remained remarkably consistent. They are portrayed as the targets of an external campaign of rejection. The institution rejected them. The British press rejected them. The American press later rejected them. Lifestyle brand customers, according to the implied framing, simply failed to recognize the value of the products being offered. And now, by the present moment, the Hollywood A-list is also being framed as the latest constituency to have failed Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. The pattern, in their telling, never lands on the household itself. It always lands on the people who, by whatever route, have ended up no longer within their proximity. That framing is, by every available reading, what makes the situation effectively unrecoverable. Because the operating mode that produced the social collapse cannot, in any meaningful operational sense, be reformed unless the underlying premise itself is reformed. And the underlying premise, by every available indication, does not appear to be under any visible review. The household continues to operate exactly as it has for the past 5 years. The wedding anniversary posts, the Geneva speech, the As Ever launches, the brand merchandising attached to the late Queen Elizabeth II, attached to the founder's daughter, and now attached even to the wedding itself. The patterns are not changing. And the people watching those patterns have, one by one, drawn what they see as the inevitable conclusion. This is also the underlying judgment that explains every other major story from the past month. The empty Geneva Square, the wedding anniversary tribute that landed in deafening A-list silence, the Daily Mail editorial split over the Project Thaw question, the Invictus financial picture, the Montecito kitchen that has now become a financial signal. All of it exists within the same broader story. The operating mode that the Sussex household has maintained since the original royal departure has now, by nearly every available metric within the celebrity ecosystem that once surrounded it, lost the very friends it was designed to retain. So this is the picture as we leave it. A wedding guest list that has, by nearly every available signal within today's celebrity ecosystem, almost completely disengaged from the household it once celebrated. Oprah Winfrey remains at a careful distance, seemingly held in orbit more by commercial calculation than by visible social closeness. And George Clooney and Amal Clooney appear publicly distant and quietly absent from every social calendar that now matters. Serena Williams, once considered the original Hollywood ally, is now posting from the Met Gala alongside women Meghan Markle has reportedly fallen out with. Idris Elba is working on a Netflix project connected to the King's Trust. David Beckham and Victoria Beckham are being photographed alongside King Charles III at the Chelsea Flower Show. And Jessica Mulroney, the chief friend at the royal wedding itself, was left to face the fallout from her own public controversy without any visible public defense from the woman she once stood beside at Windsor. Hovering over the entire situation is another unresolved issue. A professional standards investigation reportedly underway within the Metropolitan Police concerning the protection structure surrounding the working royal family, the very structure the Sussex household walked away from in 2020. You cannot manufacture a community simply by inviting people to a wedding. You cannot maintain a community by treating its members as resources to be used and eventually discarded. And you cannot rebuild a community after it has, in slow motion, watched the previous members be treated the way the Sussex household has, by many readings, treated those who once stood inside St. George's Chapel at Windsor. Stay sharp. Stay watching. Because the story that began at a royal wedding 7 years ago is not over. By every available reading, it may only now be entering the chapter that many observers believe was visible long ago. The next press cycle will arrive within days. And the broader picture will likely continue to clarify itself. The audience following this story has now, by nearly every available measure, seen enough to begin drawing its own conclusions. I will see you very